Hello, my name is Dale Maley, and in this short video I'm going to tell you about a very interesting woodworking project. I first saw this in the July 2024 issue of Wood magazine, and as I read the article, it described how they took thin wood veneer and then epoxy glued it to very thin clear acrylic sheets. Now the four sides of this lampshade, our veneer panels, are 6 inches. Although I had only worked with veneer wood on a couple of projects, this one looked very intriguing, so I decided to go ahead and try building one of the lampshades. So the first thing, of course, is where do you get the veneer from? And I had used a company several years ago to get some very thin veneer, and it worked very well. So I looked them up. They're still in business. They're called veneersupplies.com. And I used that website to buy the veneer for this project. The magazine article suggested using a maple burl type veneer for this lampshade project. So they sell all types of different woods of veneers, and sure enough they had maple burl, so I ordered some from this website. Now in this project you have to make the grooves for the acrylic panels with the thin veneer epoxied onto them to slip into the grooves. And the magazine article recommended an 1/8 of an inch router bit, which is what I used. But when I got all done, I kind of wish I would have gone one notch bigger, maybe 3/16. And it really depends on how thick your acrylic sheets are, because they come in at least 3 different thicknesses. So you might want to do a test and just put the veneer on the plastic sheet, measure the thickness, and then make sure that your groove is big enough for the panels to fit into the grooves. Now when I read the magazine article with the pattern for the lampshade, I got confused about the corner construction. And I always take my patterns from magazines or other places and I lay them out in SketchUp, because usually there's a mistake in a pattern. So when I laid this out, it became clear what they were talking about. There's an 1/8 inch air gap between the wood corner post and the acrylic sheets, which lets a little bit of light come out from the light bulb. And it turned out this worked very well. The magazine pattern called out for using epoxy glue on the edges of the panels into the wood frame, because somehow you have to hold the bottom base and the top base onto the 4 vertical posts. I didn't really like that idea, because I probably would have got epoxy on the wrong place on the panels, or it would have ran on me. So instead I chose to put in 1/4 inch dowels in 4 corners on top and 4 corners on bottom. Just use regular Type Bond 2 glue, which you can always wash off excess with a wet rag, and this method worked great. On the bottom base panel, this lampshade, the base is pretty much solid, but to allow for expansion and contraction, it uses the floating panel concept in the bottom. So I made the wood parts out of white oak, and I made a sliding base that would fit. Well, no, actually I used 3/16 inch thick oak plywood to go into the grooves for the floating panel in the bottom. I had never made panels of veneer epoxy glued on to acrylic before, so this was a learning curve part of the project. I had taken acrylic and sawed it in my table saw before on previous projects, and I didn't need to use any blue masking tape on the edges, so I sawed it oversized 6.5 by 12.5 to end up with 6 by 12 panels. I took a pair of scissors and cut the veneer to the same oversized dimensions. It's shipped in cardboard packaging and it's very flat, so you don't have to straighten it out. I then epoxied the veneer to the acrylic. I put a sheet of wax paper over the veneer, because if you don't, some of the glue might bleed through and the veneer will stick to plywood if you're using plywood sheets to clamp it up together. Anyway, I clamped it between 2 sheets of plywood. The 5-minute epoxy only takes about 10 minutes to set. Once it was dry, I put blue masking tapes on all the edges, and I took it to the table saw and sawed it to final size on all 4 edges. That blue masking tape keeps chunks of veneer from blowing out as you table saw it. Then I removed the blue masking tape remnants. Went to my friendly Ace hardware store in Fairbury, Illinois, and I was able to buy all the lamp parts I needed for this project as shown in the photo. At the same Ace store, I bought 2 epoxy kits like this one, and the 2 tubes of material are separate, and then you push a plunger to push them down, and then you mix them together. I also bought a little plastic spreader that had teeth on it so I could evenly spread the epoxy onto the panels. Now the magazine pattern called out for buying an LED bulb that was straight, tubular, and 8 or 9 inches long. Unfortunately, my local Ace Hardware did not carry that type of bulb, so I just bought a regular bulb. And I tried that out, as you'll see in a minute, but it really only lit the bottom half of the shade because the bulb's down in the bottom half of the shade. So I ended up ordering a 9-inch long bulb, LED bulb, from Amazon. At this point I was pretty nervous about whether this whole concept would work or not, because say the veneer is too thick, then none of the light will actually come out of the light. So I went ahead and I put the small bulb in the bottom here, and I lit it up in my shop with the work lights on, and yes, it seemed to work fine, except it only lit the bottom half of the 12-inch tall panels. So the next thing I did, I turned my workshop lights off so the room was dark, and wow, this lamp is really beautiful. As I said, it only lights the bottom half, but it was just gorgeous. Here's a screenshot of the about 9-inch long straight tubular LED bulb I ordered from Amazon. They come in packs of 2, and description is shown here. Here's one of the actual bulbs I received from Amazon. I put a number 2 pencil in there and took a photo of it. It's about 9 inches long. Here's a photo of all the wood parts needed to build one of the lamps. It's white oak, and I used a teak oil-based stain on the white oak. Once the teak stain dried, I applied a coat of amber colored shellac, which dries in just 15 minutes, and then you can clean the brush up with alcohol when you're done. So here's a photo of the finished project with the longer LED light bulb. In this case, the room lights were lighted up, and you can see the 12-inch tall lampshade beside the normal size coffee cup for scale. Next, I turned off the lights so I had a dark room, and the final project was just gorgeous. My photograph really doesn't do it justice. And this has a longer LED bulb installed, and I was really impressed how beautiful this lampshade was. So, some closing thoughts on this project. This turned out to make a beautiful lampshade with the natural wood color showing through. I learned how to epoxy glue the thin veneer to the acrylic sheets and to make panels, and then used the blue masking tape method to prevent any tear out of the thin veneer while I table sawed it. And the 9-inch long skinny LED bulb lights up the whole height of the shade. As I said before, a regular bulb only lights about the bottom half of the shade. So in summary, this video explains how to design and build a lampshade made from maple burl veneer wood. Hopefully this project gives you some ideas can help you on your projects. I hope you enjoyed the video, and please subscribe. Thank you.